Sometimes when you're driving down the road all by yourself, you begin to hear a voice that tells you need to look around, pay attention. Maybe something isn't quite right. That voice is me. It's the voice of Gord. Hey, g'day everyone. Welcome back to Voice of Gord. Conversation I'm about to bring you today I've been waiting to get out for quite a while. I interviewed this young woman a couple of months ago now. It's been real busy in my world and it's been difficult getting shows out. You've probably heard me say that numerous times, and all the usual excuses apply. Anyhow, Christine Decaire is an amazing lady, just a regular working class person like me from Canada who has become a sort of example of the vindictive nature of the Canadian government as constituted under Justin Trudeau in 2024. She is awaiting a ruling on the Crown's appeal of her acquittal. What do you mean? Well, yeah, she was picked up in Ottawa during Freedom Convoy, slapped with numerous charges, went to court, beat them, was acquitted, and then the Crown decided they wanted to appeal them. I may have confused this with, as you'll hear in the show, with the concept of double jeopardy. The Crown didn't technically charge her twice, but appealing it's good enough stand-in. When we recorded this episode, she was still waiting for a ruling on that, and as of the recording of this intro, on Tuesday morning, May 21st, we are still waiting word on that. As soon as we find out, I'll put out an addendum on my Substack, or I'll update my Twitter, and you can all hear we're assuming that the judge is going to dismiss the Crown's appeal. But the whole story is ridiculous, and I hope you guys enjoy it. You'll notice that Christine doesn't have any social media. She's pretty offline. She's a pretty regular normie person, as the kids might say. But her story is important nonetheless, and I hope you guys enjoy it. As always, if you're not already, subscribe to my Substack, autonomoustruckers.substack.com. You can find me on Twitter @GordMcGill. Anything to say, questions, comments, suggestions, corrections, and hate mail, always welcomed and encouraged. Gordilocks @protonmail.com. Summer's coming. Not quite sure how the podcast schedule is going to go, but I've got plenty of them recorded. If I could ever get some damn time and edit the things, I could probably give you 2 or 3 a week for the next month, no problem. But way she goes, eh? All right, well, hey, thanks for being here, and I hope you enjoy the show. Please pass it around for me, and keep people like Christine in mind. We're supposed to have this democracy, and you're supposed to have all these rights, and it's clear if you're on the wrong side of the government's politics that you don't have them. All right, let's go. G'day everybody. Welcome back to another fantastic episode of Voice of Gord. I'm Gord. This is my voice. The other voice you're about to hear is a woman I've come to know recently after hearing about her from Mr. Chris Barber, a name many of you will be familiar with as one of the faces of the Freedom Convoy in Ottawa. And Mr. Barber let me know about Christine's story here when I first met him last November. And I've been chasing Christine all over the internet in Canada, trying to get her to come on my show ever since. So the other voice you're going to hear is named Christine Decaire, formerly of Ontario. And as I understand it, she just completed a road trip to Saskatchewan.
Yes, I did.
Right. So have you moved out there permanently?
Yes, I have.
Okay. Well, you've escaped Gulag Ontario, if not Gulag Canada.
Yes, yes, it was definitely time to get out of Ontario.
Right. Yeah. I all having also grown up there and spent a great deal of my life in Ontario, and having exited myself, congratulate you on your escape. You had some interesting experiences when you last lived in Ontario, but before we get to that, let us know who's Christine. Where'd you grow up? How did you how did you deal with life in the COVID regime, and what drove you to showing up in Ottawa a couple of years ago?
Let me just start. I am a 48-year-old woman. I have two kids and two grandkids. I guess the COVID stuff affected me greatly, specifically the shots, because I got an autoimmune disease from a flu vaccine that I got about 25 years ago. I was already apprehensive around vaccines, and then COVID happening. I guess I've had a sort of an awakening in the few years before COVID happened. And so I could clearly see what was happening during COVID and how we were being manipulated and coerced. And so feeling, I guess at the time of the Freedom Convoy, feeling pretty, what's the right word? Sad and like something needed to be done. Like we couldn't go on the way it was going.
Where exactly are you living during the COVID times? Where are you working? What are the sort of details of your life at this time?
Okay, so at the time I was living in the Peterborough area of Ontario. I was working part-time for a trucking company.
Which one?
I It was a very small company. I do accounting. I worked in accounting for 25 years, so I've worked in quite a few different industries. But coincidentally, I was working for a small trucking company that had like dump trucks and trailers and were moving stuff between pits and stuff like that. And then after that, I worked for another trucking company after the Freedom Convoy that was in Peterborough. They owned about 50 trucks, had about 10 owner operators, and I did accounting for that company.
Who are they?
E.G. Gray.
Oh yeah, I've heard of them. Yep.
Yes, yes. So I worked for them for, I guess, a little over a year before I made the choice to move out west. Yeah, I was working at a trucking company doing accounting, and I didn't really let them know what I was up to because I wasn't really sure how they felt about things. But I was did most of the work from my laptop, so I just had to, when I was there at the Freedom Convoy, I just had to go back like one day a week and exchange paperwork, and I could do most of my work I needed to do working for that trucking company while I was even there at the convoy.
Right. So for my listeners who don't know, Peterborough, Ontario is roughly halfway between the cities of Toronto and Ottawa.
Mm-hmm.
And Peterborough to Ottawa along Highway 7 is what, 2.5 hour drive?
I would say 3.5 hour drive.
3.5?
Yeah, about that. So yeah, that's how far I was from Ottawa. I found out about the Freedom Convoy before Eddie Trucks even left from out west, probably, I don't know, maybe about 2 weeks before, something like that. I had learned about what was going on, and it gave me a lot of hope and that. So I really followed it online and followed online the whole convoy traveling across the country. So the first Saturday for the convoy in Ottawa, we left Peterborough and we kind of just joined the end of the convoy to head in down the 401 and followed some trucks in and spent the whole day there. It was completely amazing. Left that night and left with a feeling that I absolutely had to go back. I was there on that first Saturday with my boyfriend, and all week we were planning how to get back there the next Saturday. So the following Saturday, I went back there with my boyfriend and my son and spent that day there. Then the next day was the day that Coventry got raided. And so from that point on, the three of us just had this feeling like we had to be there.
Right. In Coventry, for those who don't know, the Freedom Convoy occupation or protest, as it were, depending on who you talk to, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
There was several spots. Obviously, the main body of the protest was on Wellington Street in front of Parliament Hill. And then there was a few other streets where trucks were stacked up. And then there was a bunch of trucks that sort of got stuck on this road that follows the river called Sir John A. Macdonald Parkway, which has since been renamed to some native Aboriginal name that nobody can pronounce, because that's what Canada does now. They erase history and change things to native stuff that I don't even think the natives care about. And outside of downtown, a bunch of trucks that couldn't make it were sort of all bundled up at this place called Coventry, and that's where one of the soup kitchens was built, and a lot of logistics for maintaining the protest was sort of emanating from there.
Yeah. So when that raid happened and the police took all the cans of fuel, my boyfriend and a friend of his loaded up the truck, and the next day they headed down to Ottawa with a pickup truck and a trailer, a bunch of food, a bunch of fuel, and went right to Coventry. The next day drove and tried to see what was going on downtown. And on Nicholas Street, that was where they first kind of came into downtown, and they pulled in there to talk to the group of trucks that were there. And they had just had some trucks leave that morning and needed some other people to come in to take up these spots. And so that's what my boyfriend did. Once he got a spot there, myself and my son headed down then that day. I think it was that night that I believe that we were down there. So we were on Nicholas Street. So we weren't right in the downtown area. We were this little block that was on the other side of the canal. And this little block, we became like a pretty close group of people on that little street.
Right,
So
like
I was there.
your very own neighborhood.
Yes.
And I find
Yeah.
I just find it interesting how you said you went the first weekend. I as well was there the first weekend, and I felt the same way. Like I had to drive a whole lot further away. I mean, I live in the United States now, not too far from Peterborough or Ottawa, but far enough. And I was just thinking about Ottawa the whole time I was gone. I was trying to figure out how I was going to juggle work and kids and coming back to Ottawa to express solidarity again. And by the time I got my act together to come back to Ottawa, they had invoked the Emergencies Act. And I honestly thought that because of my writing activities for Newsweek magazine, if I crossed the border, they might hold me there or accuse me of going back to the protest or something. Like, who knows, right? Because the Emergencies Act is like basically, only a couple of steps away from martial law. I was greatly concerned for my safety if I tried to come back to Canada. Some people might think that's a bit extreme, but it was a pretty crazy time. But I mean, you felt so you had a bad reaction to a flu vaccine shot 2 decades ago. You're watching what's going on with all of the mandates and the unbelievable campaign of scapegoating and outgrouping against those people who made their own health decisions. And you go to Freedom Convoy and you discover all of your people are there, and it's amazing, and you've never felt this good in many years. And you had to go back. Many such cases. You're on Nicholas Street now. What's going on? What's the date for the rest? What are the dates for the rest of your story of Ottawa?
So yeah, I showed up there, I would say the Wednesday of the second week. And then we were there from in on right till the 18th when we were all arrested.
Right. So the Emergencies Act comes down on the evening of the afternoon, I should say, of February 14th,
Yep.
2022. And one of my friends, a fellow named Tim from near Brooks, Alberta, was on Wellington Street. He skipped town because he had a friend of his trailer, another associate of mine from Alberta, a fellow named Clifford Smith, and he wanted to get out because he didn't want Clifford's trailer to get impounded. So he boogied out.
Mm-hmm.
And I understand a number of people made similar decisions over the next few days, but a lot of people stayed. A lot of people held the line, as Tamara Litch put it.
Yes.
And you were one of them.
Yes. What's a big part of me that I just couldn't believe that the police would really come in and crack down on us like that when we really weren't, like, there was no violence and there was nothing. And for us on Nicholas Street too, our street was not closed off. Like there were 2 lanes of traffic that were going past us at all times. So we were also in a very unique situation on Nicholas Street because there's traffic going by us all the time. And Nicholas Street is a throughway from like the 417 into Gatineau. Like you can take that road all the way into Gatineau. So we had traffic going by us all the time.
Right. And something that our antagonists like to say is that, the Freedom Convoy had streets completely closed off. That's a lie. There was always at least one lane open on all streets the trucks were parked.
Yep.
And interestingly enough, concrete barricades started showing up at some point during the protest, and those were placed there by the city of Ottawa, not you.
Yes. Yes, there were barricades put in front of the trucks at the very front of the row of the little block we had. There were barricades put up by the police. I don't think it was the cement ones, but there were some sort of police barricades put up at the front of our trucks there on that street. The trucks that were up there.
So obviously your time at the convoy was really good. I mean, you went,
amazing.
You went back. Could you tell us how that changed once the Emergencies Act was declared, and what were the 4 days like between the 14th and the 18th when you say you were arrested?
Okay, the 14th was a very sad day. I actually remember when we first heard that the Emergencies Act was invoked. There was a few tears and just shock and dismay from all of us there on Nicholas Street. Like for me, I really couldn't believe that this was happening and this is Canada. So I think after the first day, the 14th, the shock of kind of all of that happening, it was pretty tense from that point on because we weren't sure what was going to happen. And we were being told on one side by lawyers and by people on social media that what we were doing was not illegal. We were legally protesting. And then we had police coming by telling us that what we were doing was illegal and we needed to leave. I didn't personally have any conversation with a police officer regarding that, but I just know other people on the street did. And so it was very confusing. It was because, yeah, on one side we're being told that what we're doing is completely legal, but the police are coming around and telling us we're not. So it was a lot of confusion in those first couple days. But then when nothing happened, we kind of thought, okay, so now what? And then, yeah, Friday morning we got a big shock.
What time did things start happening on Friday the 18th?
About 7 o'clock in the morning. So we were the first people. So Nicholas Street was the first people arrested on a police like crackdown to shut down the Freedom Convoy. So they came up our street on a Friday, probably about 7 o'clock in the morning. I think I'm recorded of being arrested around 7:30.
So you're on Nicholas Street. So you're hanging out at your boyfriend's truck. It's just a pickup truck, correct?
No, we had a cargo trailer. So my boyfriend had a cargo trailer there, like I don't know, probably like a 16-foot enclosed, like single axle trailer that's used for like, the toys. Has tracks down the middle so the snow and the dirt can. So it wasn't even like it was really cold.
Right. But I mean, it was that trailer was towed by a pickup truck, correct?
Yes, it was. Yeah.
Right. So did you have some kind of like, propane heater or something? Were you guys staying in the
Yes.
trailer?
Yes, we were staying in the trailer and we had a propane heater and a diesel heater. Those are two heaters we had.
Right. So like what, the cops come and start banging on your door on the trailer at 7 o'clock saying,
Yep.
get out?
Yep. It had snowed really heavily the night before. And so my boyfriend had already gotten up and he was actually outside starting to shovel snow when he looked down the far end of the street and he could see that the police had put barricades up there and that there was a whole bunch of police down there.
Does this mean you guys had no way to drive out?
No, at that point we didn't have any way to get out of there. And our trailer at that time, my boyfriend's trailer wasn't hooked up to a truck or anything. It was sitting there in the turning lane of Nicholas Street. So yeah, he was out down the street and he got arrested down the street. The police come up the street and start banging. I'm inside the trailer. He was able to run up and bang on the trailer and let me know the police were coming. So I'm trying to get dressed and get my coat on, and I've never been arrested before, so I didn't
I
know
think
exactly what was going to happen.
I think that goes for just about everybody that was picked up at Freedom Convoy. Like
Yeah,
almost nobody had a criminal record, right? Like these
yeah,
are, the thing people need to understand about Freedom Convoy is that, these are steady as she goes, regular working class people who
yes,
normally don't get involved in any trouble and don't get involved in events such as this. And the sort of story here is that, the mandates and the climate of fear, the bifurcation of society, the scapegoating, the outgrouping, the rhetoric we heard from everybody had taken the most normal, normie, regular working people and made them do this, right?
Mhm.
Or sort of having forced this on society. The people who would normally never take part in something like this, they're just sort of busy working and leading their lives, were like, enough is enough, right? So
Absolutely.
no criminal records amongst you.
No.
What's your boyfriend's name again? Scott?
Yeah, Scott Hockaday, yep.
Right. And so were you guys like arrested, handcuffed, and taken away, or did they just charge you and tell you to get out?
No, they took us away. We were all arrested and put in paddy wagons and taken to a far end of Ottawa and released out onto the street, not knowing where the heck we were.
Oh, well, I heard about that happening to a few people. I didn't realize it happened to you as well.
Oh, yes. Yes, it did.
That's an interesting tactic on the part of the police.
Yeah.
Ostensibly, the government wants you guys to clear out. So instead of letting you drive your vehicles away, they arrest you, drive you halfway across town or out into some rural area and drop you off. Like,
Yeah.
okay, cool. How are you supposed to move your
Yeah.
vehicles when the police are
Yeah.
doing this?
Yeah. They took us to some sort of like city building, and that's where we were processed. Like we were taken in then from the paddy wagons and we were searched, and well, they convinced us not to talk to lawyers and then gave us the paperwork for our charges, and then yeah, just walked us out through this big parking lot, like completely gated in parking lot, and just opened this big gate and said, there you go. We had no idea, like I had no idea where we were even in Ottawa.
Right. So here's a question, and I hope I'm not trying to impugn anybody by asking this, but given that the Emergencies Act was declared on the 14th
Mhm.
and people would have known something was coming down, did any of the like block captains or sort of, you know, quasi leadership of the Freedom Convoy go around and tell people, like give them some kind of basic legal advice, like don't talk to the cops without a lawyer?
Yeah. Well, not so much the block leaders. Like there were a couple groups of like lawyer advocate groups that were going around and talking to people. They came around our street and talked to us. And like JCCF was one of them, the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms. And then there was another one that was coming around and you know, advocating for their group. So we kind of had that advice. And then watching we were also, I wouldn't say like the block leaders gave us any sort of, legal advice or anything like that. They did let everybody know to leave if that's what they wanted to do, or if they were worried or scared, and some people did. Um, I know a couple of people that were on the street and they were afraid. They were small business owners and they really were afraid that something might happen. So they cleared all their vehicles or whatever off the street or off of downtown Ottawa because they were very afraid at that point what the government might do.
Right. So no one told you, oh, you guys have to stay or you have to hold the line,
Oh,
or
no,
if you need.
absolutely not.
Right. Right.
No.
That's interesting given everything we've heard from the government and whatnot. Um,
Yeah, no.
so you and Scott get arrested, you get processed.
Yeah.
What were you initially charged with?
So it was also my son. He got arrested too.
How old's your boy?
Um, he was 28 at the time of the convoy. He was sleeping in his vehicle. They broke three of his windows in his vehicle and pulled him out and roughed him up a little bit. Surprisingly, they lost his arresting notes though, so they stayed his charges because they couldn't find the arresting notes of the officers breaking three of his windows in his vehicle, I guess.
Oh, imagine that. Imagine losing any documentation that might show the cops being the bad guys. This is my surprised face.
Yeah, yeah. Yes, I'm sure it was just a pure coincidence on the police's part that there was also the part that he was videotaping during the time that they were breaking his windows. So there is still videotape of that, of the three of his windows being broken out of his vehicle when he was telling them he's just getting dressed. Like he was trying to put like his pants on, and they broke his windows and then pulled him out of the car and put him face down in the snow.
Wow, proper Ottawa welcome, eh?
Yeah.
Sons
Yes.
of bitches.
Yeah.
Right. So what did you all get charged with?
So I got charged with 2 counts of mischief and disobeying a court order. Scott got charged with 2 counts of mischief, disobeying a court order, and resisting arrest, which they dismissed later because he didn't do anything. There is testimony in his trial where the cops said he's observed him from afar, turned around, well, actually facing the police with a Bible in his hand and then turning around and putting his hands behind his back. So with that testimony, they dismissed the resisting arrest charge. And then our disobey a court order, those charges got dropped as well. The Crown dropped those charges.
What was the court order they claimed you had disobeyed that they later found you did not disobey?
I think there may have been some sort of court order that was in place, but because we weren't properly notified of this court order and what this court order entailed, they couldn't pursue charges on it, is what I understand.
You get charged. I'm assuming eventually you make your way back to your vehicles and head back to Peterborough at some point.
Yep.
When did you finally get home to Peterborough?
Okay, I went home to Peterborough on, well, I would say it was the evening of the 18th. It was the day I got arrested. My son and I headed home probably, it must have been like 8, 9 o'clock at night. We headed home back to Peterborough, and my boyfriend Scott, he stayed there and just to see of what they had to say the next day about the vehicles. Because that day they were saying that they were going to court to try and get possession of all the vehicles, to try and confiscate them or whatever. And that if we did get our vehicles back, it was going to cost us thousands and thousands. Like, I think they said something like $5,000 to get like one vehicle out of the impound. So we had a week to wait. They say everything was impounded for 7 days. We probably had about 5 of the other guys that were on the street because they had all their vehicles impounded. They couldn't go anywhere. They're from Manitoba. So we brought them back to Peterborough with us, and some of them stayed at our house, and then some of them stayed at a hotel in town close to us. And we spent a few days there because there was nothing for us to do in Ottawa for 7 days after we got arrested.
Amazing how the government decided to basically hijack your vehicles and extort you guys for money.
Yes.
You would have thought, hey, we want you to get out of town, scram. Logically, they would have just got rid of the barricades and said, okay, get out, or we're going to get charged, or we're going to do this to you, rather than immediately smashing windows, arresting people, and then preventing you from getting your vehicles and leaving. It became a hijack and ransom operation, which means, I think the punishment, the resentment of the government at, you guys daring to exercise your charter protected rights was more of what's going on here. And that continues. So
yes,
you went to court and had your charges of mischief acquitted. Is that not correct?
Yes, that is correct.
When were your charges acquitted?
It was like March or April of last year.
Of 2023?
Yep.
Did your boyfriend Scott's charges also get acquitted?
No, he was found guilty just last month.
Right. I wasn't sure if he had if he was found guilty on this appeal nonsense that they're pulling on you.
Yeah, so he is his appeal has now been filed, so he is appealing his conviction.
But when I said the appeal, so you were acquitted in spring of 2023, and now the Crown has appealed your acquittal.
Yes.
So for my listeners, many of whom are in the United States, there's a concept called double jeopardy, where if the government comes after you for something, takes you to court, charges you with whatever, and then you beat them, you're acquitted or found not guilty, the government's not allowed to bring you back into court under the same charges. Like the government lost and that's it. Game over. See you later. Everybody go home now. Apparently that's not the case in Canada.
Yeah, so they can appeal. Either side can appeal, right? So yes, the Crown has appealed 2 mischief charges.
Okay, so has anyone on the Crown side, be it them or the prosecutor, their counsel, has anyone given any indication as to why? Has your defense lawyer read any tea leaves in any of the documents? Like, is there any explanation for this that's not them just being vindictive CUNTSs?
Well, I will read you. I actually have right in front of me the Crown's factum that was filed with the court that specifically lays out here what they are appealing. So the first one, they feel that the trial judge erred in 2 material respects. First, the trial judge erred in application of principal and party liability. So what this is that basically I was acquitted because the judge said in his verdict that I was not committing any act of mischief when I was arrested. That the testimony that was in court said that the cop that first saw me, and I forget how far away, 10 feet away when he first saw me, and I was speaking to other officers, that I was standing on the street by myself. There was nobody, no other protesters or nobody else from the street around me. It was only myself and a bunch of cops around me. So the judge found that at the time that I was arrested, I was not committing mischief because I was not actively protesting. I was not around other protesters, and that just being present there doesn't make you guilty of the collective's actions.
And that's what the Crown was trying to hang on you. And that's what they're appealing. They disagree with the judge on this particular question, that you simply being on the street is an indication that you're in mischief, taking part in mischief.
Exactly. That is the Crown's case. Yes.
What's the second part of their appeal?
So then the second one, that they feel that the evidence that the judge engaged in speculative reasoning and entertained theories that were theoretically possible but not reasonable.
So hold on a second here. The Crown, who are charging peaceful protesters with mischief, are accusing the judge, who found you not guilty because all you were doing was hanging around on the street, that this is a theory and that his theories are wrong.
Yes.
Okay. So this to me just sounds like, I mean, they're just throwing shit at the wall.
Yeah.
Right? This has got this actually has nothing to do with whether or not you are actually committing mischief, because any reasonable person, anyone engaging in logic, can see that you are not. This is the government being vindictive and trying to punish you, and they're having a hissy fit because the judge didn't side with them wanting to punish you for exercising your charter protected rights to protest.
Yes, that is exactly what it says in here between the lines. Yes.
Right.
Pretty much.
So your legal counsel, I understand it, is Diane Magus?
Yes, for my appeal, yes.
Right. And I'm assuming that your legal counsel shares our opinion on the matter.
Yes, she does. Yeah.
Right. And she also agreed that you were fine to come on the show and didn't think that this was going
Yes.
to cause you any trouble in case
No.
CSIS or Crown spooks listen to this at some point.
Yes, no. So the hearing has already happened for my appeal. It had happened 2 weeks ago. And
Okay.
so now we are just waiting for the verdict, the response from the judge.
What was the question at the hearing? What happened at the hearing?
Well, so for appeal hearings, like I did not have to attend any of the appearances and I didn't have to attend the hearing, but I wanted to. I just wanted to see, so I just spent the day on Zoom, so I watched it on Zoom. Yeah, no, I really felt watching it all day that the Crown was really reaching at straws. They didn't really have a strong case in this of that. The judge had lots of questions for him and he did a whole lot of fumbling in the answers. He did not seem confident at all. And so my lawyer, Diane, was fantastic and just on it. And when I talked to her after court was finished for the day, her opinion was the same as mine, that it did not go well for the Crown at all. They did not, and that it really went well for us. The judge seemed, could never tell with a judge's responses necessarily, but I'm just saying I got a really good feeling from that hearing, and so did my lawyer. And so I'm quite confident that we're going to get a good outcome.
Okay, so to take me back here, this is where I'm going to ask you maybe I don't want to say a difficult question, but maybe revealing. So you're a regular working class person. You're doing accounting for trucking companies.
Mhm.
You've got a son, and did you say you had two kids?
Yeah, I have a daughter as well.
Right. So you got a couple kids. You got a boyfriend. You're just a regular person.
Mhm.
I'd never heard of you before this came about. I'm assuming you don't have like you're not leading a cult. You don't have like
No,
some podcast attacking the government. You're not like an out there political enemy. You don't work for the Conservative Party. The only thing connecting you to any of this is that you suffered this vaccine injury many years ago and you disagreed with what the government was doing under COVID. Like, is that basically it? That's like your entire
yes,
contextual story here.
yes, and I do not have a big online presence. So yeah, there was nothing like online that they found or submitted during my trial that really,
That's
they did have video of me, a separate video of somebody doing one of the or the people who walked around and videoed all the time. They did find me on a video of that out in Coventry like a week before I got arrested. But that's the only like online stuff they could find about me. So it's not like they even had online stuff where I was out there, really against the government or anything like that. Like,
right. So this is interesting. This is an interesting counterexample because so many other of the Freedom Convoy people,
mhm,
especially as I mentioned before, Chris Barber,
mhm,
one of the gentlemen involved with the Coots situation, which I've been covering, Tony Olyanek, he made a bunch of videos and put them on Instagram, and the government's trying to come at them for things they said, which is to say, they're using social media as a conduit to get into these guys' heads and basically try and convict them for the courage of their convictions and their opinions, which is very dystopian. But they didn't even have that on you. You're just
no.
you're just a regular, and I'm not saying you're a nobody, but you're just a sort of regular working class
Yeah, but
person
Yeah.
that you came to Ottawa, you took part in the protest, you made your voice heard, you exercised your charter rights, engaged in no violence, didn't do anything wrong, and then they want to vindictively appeal your acquittal and drag you back into court and treat you like you're a threat to the nation or something. Like, your case here is very revealing about what the Canadian government is about. Like, how do you feel about that?
Everything you just said. Like I'm a grandma. Like I've never been arrested. I don't have a big online presence. I don't, I'm not controversial in any way. I'm not, yeah, really, I don't mind saying I'm really a nobody. Like, nobody knows who I am. I'm not one of the big people of the convoy. Nobody knew who I was while I was there. I never made that. I'm actually a really private person, so I just don't, never have put a lot of stuff online. And yeah, why I would be the one that they would choose to really go after, and like, yeah, I don't know. I don't understand it. I know with Scott, my boyfriend, he does have an online presence, and there was definitely some social media stuff that was brought up in his trial that, was different from mine because I didn't have any. So yeah, why they chose my case to appeal, and it is a mystery to me.
In your boyfriend Scott's case, do you think his conviction was due in part to whatever he happened to say on social media? I don't know. I've never met Scott, and I
I
don't know.
Yeah, I think it probably contributed to it. Yeah. Yeah. I think it did.
So he was convicted in part for having an opinion and expressing it publicly.
Yes. Yes.
Welcome to Canada.
Yes.
1984 or 2024 or both?
Yeah. Yeah. Who knows?
So
Who
he's
knows? But yeah.
so you moved to Saskatchewan. Is he going to
Yeah.
be how much more logistically difficult is it going to be for him with the appeal of his conviction, given that you guys have moved halfway across the country?
Well, we have not. I have moved out here. He is still in Ontario. He has a farm there. But the appeal process is not something that it's really handled by lawyers. Like, you don't have to, as like for me, I did not have to attend any of the hearings leading up, or any of the court appearances leading up to the hearing. I did not have to attend the hearing, but it was my choice. If I wanted to attend any of those things, then they would make that happen. So I did not attend any of the hearings. I just the day, or any of the court appearances. Sorry. I just attended the hearing where the arguments were made for the court to grant an appeal to the Crown, which they won't.
Right. When do you hear about, when are you expecting a ruling on your case?
Well, with appeals court, so there's no, it's the judge will release her verdict and will send her whole response to both the Crown and my lawyer when she has it done. So that's how appeal court. There's no other hearing. We will, as her words were that day, we will get it when we get it.
Right.
So there's no real timeline.
Typical government response.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So I don't know. I just expect someday to get a email from my lawyer.
Imagine if the rest of the economy functioned in the same way as the Canadian quote unquote justice system or any other part of the government functioned, right? Like, we would be in some pretty, I mean, Canadian society is already in deep shit, but if the vestigial remains of the private sector, such as there is one, functioned like the state does, like, nothing would ever get done and we'd all be starving.
Yes, but you know what? I do have to say that I don't think Canada is completely lost, and I don't think our court system is completely lost either, because I thought the judge that I had was very fair in my case. Maybe not in some others, but I do still think there's hope in our justice system.
Wow, that's a bold statement. Black pillars, get the F out of here. Christine has hope.
I do have hope. I definitely do.
Well, maybe that's because you're in Saskatchewan now. My friend Trent lives in
Yes.
Saskatoon, and he's a very patriotic Saskatchewanian, gapper
Yeah.
prairie boy. Is the optimism of moving to a new place, making you feel good? Like, what's going? So you've moved to Saskatchewan. What's going
Yeah.
on?
So, now I am here. Yeah, did my road trip from Ontario out here, brought all my stuff. So now I'm officially moved out here. So now it's that wonderful time of looking for a job, and I'm staying at my sister near Swift Current for the time being until I get a job and get myself established here. Yeah, my daughter and my grandkids, they live in Kinserlee, which is the main reason I'm out here, is because my grandkids are here.
You said, oh, you mean Kindersley?
Yes.
Yeah, that'll be north of Swift Current, the fairways.
Yes, about 2 hours away from where I am right now.
Yeah, I used to roam the prairie hauling farm equipment and grain and fertilizer, and I spent a fair bit of time out there in my youth.
Yes. Oh, it's
Nice.
beautiful here.
Yeah, the prairie certainly has its charms, and even though it's still in Canada, it's at least a minimum safe distance from Toronto or Ottawa. So that's in your favor, and your life is going to be exponentially better
So
now.
much. Oh, I think so. Yes. Ontario has way too many people. I like the population so far of Saskatchewan. I'm really enjoying that part.
Right. Yeah, there's gonna be more refugees as the real estate market and Trudeau's unnatural inflation of it with inviting wide swaths of the third world to come to a country where 100,000 people are living in tent camps and nobody can afford homes anymore.
Yeah, especially like the cities, it's really sad. Like I'm kind of out here. Well, I'm like 40 minutes maybe from Swift Current. So, I mean, we're right out here on the grid roads. I'm out in the boonies, so it's
Right.
quite nice. But
40
yeah,
minutes
I
outside of
stay.
Swift Current. You're way out there.
Yeah, I'm out here. Yeah, it's nice and quiet though.
Good. And your daughter and your grandkids are happy to have you out there?
Yes. Yes. And they've been out here. So they've been out here, was it 2 years now already? It might be 2 years coming up this summer. It'll be 2 years for them being out here. So yeah, and my daughter and grandkids, they love it. And yeah, my sister's been out here for 3 years and they love it. And yeah, so it's a nice change. I've never lived out of Ontario before. I moved around quite a bit in Ontario and lived at different places, but I've never lived outside of Ontario. And coming out here last September for my daughter's wedding was the first time I'd ever been out west.
Wow. Well, finally catching up with all the truckers whom
Yeah.
you had supported. You caught the bug.
Yes.
You went to
Yes.
you went to Ottawa. You didn't catch COVID. You caught the travel bug.
I did. I did. Yeah. Yeah, and then it just so happens I don't live that far from Chris Barber, and he's such a great guy, and he helped me out with like doing a fundraiser and stuff like that for my legal fees for my appeal.
Oh,
And
good,
so yeah, that was such a blessing. And
good. Well, I hope you get to have a beer with them.
yeah, yeah, I hope so too.
Well, good. Well, maybe we'll leave it there. You made it to Saskatchewan. It seems
Hmm.
like the vindictive appeal of your acquittal is probably going to get knocked down. We
I
don't know
hope,
yet,
yeah,
but let me know when that gets
I
finalized.
definitely will.
Any further commentary or advice for my listeners, or anything else you want to tell us before you go?
My last thought is this. is I think people are out there right now. I think a lot of things have been happening since the beginning of this year, and there's been a major shift in things. And I think that if we can, as our freedom group of people, stay in a really positive mindset, I think good things are on their way. Like, I think this is a very shifting year because it has been since the beginning of this year. And I have a lot of optimism and hope for the future. And I think things are shifting right now. So I hope other people feel that too and be more positive and share the positivity. And if we can do that, it just helps everybody.
That's a great message. And yeah, thank you for sharing your positivity with us, Christine.
Well, thank you for having me.
All right, way of the road.